want to come sit down. There's also a few more donuts over here if you want to.
Thundering her.
I'm Cornell Clayton. I'm the director of the Thomas S. Foley Institute here at WSU. And on behalf of the Institute and on behalf of our partners in today's event, the Common Ministry of WSU, I want to welcome you out to our event. We're very honored and privileged to have with us today Sister Simone Campbell. She's a Roman Catholic sister, an attorney, an author, and executive director of Network, a Catholic social justice lobby group. Sister Campbell took her first religious vows in 1967 and subsequently received her bachelor's degree from St. Mary's College in Los Angeles and her Juris Doctorate from the University of California, Davis. During the 2010 congressional debate over healthcare reform, Sister Campbell wrote the famous Nuns letter supporting the reform bill, in which was later cited as a critical part in the passage of the Affordable Care Act. In 2012, Sister Campbell led the first Nuns on the Bus tour, organized by Network, in which she and fellow sisters made a cross-country trip advocating for social justice. Their work has continued since that time. The 2015 Nuns on the Bus tour just recently reached its conclusion. So without any further ado, I'll turn the time over to Sister Campbell. She's going to speak for about a half an hour or 40 minutes, and then we'll open up for some Q&A after.
Super. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really excited to be here and to be surrounded by all this great political stuff. It makes my heart happy and me not feel homesick for Washington, D.C., that I claim as my current home residence. I am, however, a Californian, so I'm a West Coast person. But I've been living in D.C. almost 11 years now and working on Capitol Hill during that time. I want to take this time to chat a bit with you about some of the challenges that we're facing in our political reality, to touch on some of the issues that I've heard about in my 48 hours that I've been here in Pullman, and to lift up what I think are some of the key issues or key ways forward that might be of help for us as a nation. And certainly the closing is to beg the leadership and engagement of the youth among us, because we need help. And so we need your help. So let me just say that from the beginning, that I have a bias towards your help at the end. And hopefully we'll be able to do some conversation across the different ages represented. We were just at a morning workshop where one of the ideas for moving forward was having more intergenerational dialogue. And so I think we have a great opportunity this afternoon to do that. So I understand you've been reading a book about, what's it called? Mercy? Just Mercy. And that just mercy, in that context, you've been reading it, everybody looks knowledgeable. It is the beginning of the school year, but you still remember that, right? Right. Everybody goes, oh yes, oh yes. All right, but just mercy, as I understand it, has been more about the criminal justice system, more about the whole issue of crimes, of how economics has made the school-to-prison pipeline has been driven by an economic reality, and the for-profit prisons that are trying to determine their future building by asking for third-grade test scores now, so they can predict how many people will be in prison in the future. Pretty worrisome stuff, if you ask me. Pretty worrisome that we even have for-profit prisons who use as their business plan stricter sentencing guidelines so that there's a greater need for their services. Seems wrong to me, but that's a whole nother topic. What I want to talk about is mercy in what too often becomes culture wars. Too often becomes the struggle among us for the political soundbite, the political organization. And I'd like to lift up two specific examples in that. But first, I want to say that the definition of mercy is a compassionate or kindly forbearance shown towards an offender or an enemy. Compassion towards an enemy? I don't want to say anything, but when I was reflecting on this, it didn't quite seem to be the American way. It did seem to be sort of a faith perspective of any faith that we're supposed to, at least in the Christian tradition, love our enemies. In the Jewish tradition, it's all about welcoming the stranger and because we were strangers once. In Islam, it has similar references to welcoming the stranger and hospitality towards all, even your enemy. In Buddhism, it's all about caring for those who suffer and let your suffering be transformed into enlightenment. All the traditions that I know of have this idea of compassion and mercy. So why do we have such little of it, I begin to wonder, when we have so many of us that identify with a religious tradition? I don't know. Either we're not very good teachers about our tradition, or it's just plain difficult to do. I have a hunch it's the latter part. I don't hear about compassion or mercy on Capitol Hill when I'm lobbying there. It just doesn't come across. Do any of you all listen to the news sometimes? And it's not exactly news that you have either on Fox or MSNBC or CNN or PBS. You don't. After Pope Francis's visit a week ago yesterday, I did a Fox News piece where I was supposed to be the progressive and there was a conservative, and we were supposed to argue about what Pope Francis meant. Well, Howard Kurtz, who was hosting this, I think got a little annoyed with us because we agreed. Pope Francis really was speaking about the hope of our society, about coming together, about being our better selves. I got to be in the chambers when Pope Francis addressed the Congress, and I was sitting in the front row in the gallery, and it was an amazing honor. I was sitting next to Cindy McCain, John McCain's wife, and on the other side of me was a Jesuit volunteer, a 23-year-old from Washington State, who had gotten Senator Patty Murray's one ticket to be there in the chambers. He was so excited. Well, I was really excited, and so was Mrs. McCain. It was something that we could all share. But in speaking with her before the Pope spoke, I found out how hard it is for Senator McCain, because right now he would really like to do something on immigration reform. But his trouble is not with the Democrats. His trouble is within the Republican Party, because everyone needs to look more conservative, more polarized. Because Senator McCain, who is not known as a liberal or even a moderate, has 3 Tea Party challengers for the Senate in Arizona. That is driving fear into all of the current elected officials' hearts, so that they don't have, in order to do their work, they don't have the room for mercy or compassion, because they're looking at survival. Quite frankly, Mrs. McCain was saying that Senator McCain's very worried, and so was she, that if Tea Party folks got elected, it was only going to pull or divide the Republican Party more and cripple the Congress even more than it is. Seems a little hard to imagine, in my view, how that could be even worse, but I've experienced it over the last few years. So, what did Pope Francis do? Well, I think Pope Francis did an amazing piece of speaking to our values, to who do we think we are as people in the United States. What is that thing that we call the American dream? What does that mean for us? But to look at this, let's look at a couple of current examples, okay? One is Planned Parenthood. Have you heard about what's going on with Planned Parenthood? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I hear that there was arson of the Planned Parenthood location here in town. Students heard about that? There's this whole thing about did Planned Parenthood sell fetal tissue in an illegal fashion? The answer appears to be no. But unencumbered by data, people will continue to raise it up for political purposes. And quite frankly, what is lost in this whole soundbite is what Planned Parenthood does for especially low-income women, for OBGYN screenings, for treatment of STDs, of engagement with family planning. And so the big plan of some of the far right in the organizing principle is let's defund Planned Parenthood. It's the rallying cry of the right because they are the abortionists. Unencumbered by data, they will do that. Unencumbered by much data, the far left has the rallying cry of defend Planned Parenthood at all costs, no matter what. And you know what? This becomes not about Planned Parenthood, but about the 2016 election and rallying the base. And women in the process get lost. This is what just is driving me nuts. The fact is, these pesky facts. Planned Parenthood uses no federal money for abortions. Planned Parenthood raises private funds for the few clinics that do abortions. The Planned Parenthood office here in Pullman, as I understand it, did no abortions. But that doesn't matter because it's a soundbite. It's a polarizing place where we can be right. The anguish is women get hurt in the process. So we also know that Planned Parenthood the services they offer are paid for mostly out of Medicaid dollars, which means that it's reimbursement for low-income women getting paid with insurance for services rendered. Now, I'm a Catholic sister. You probably picked up on that, right? And you're a little surprised about me with me. I would imagine that I would talk about Planned Parenthood in a positive way. And some of you may be Catholic and say, oh my God, she's talking about Satan. The painful reality is that we live in a complex world where we need a deeper analysis that is more than the simplistic yes-no on a single service. And to see what poor women need. And so what I have come over my years of lobbying on the Capitol Hill to realize is what we have to do is really hold to our values, but then make sure that women or anyone get services that they need. And for that reason, I have come to see that while I personally think abortion is not a good choice, I'm way more than pro-birth. I'm pro-life. And for me, that goes to the issue of mercy. Mercy, which is the compassionate or kindly forbearance. Mercy is that capacity to say, how are we going to push? How can I stand by? And in an extreme argument, close down a program which serves low-income women and such when nobody else does. I've had to learn that it's way more complex than the simple soundbite. And that simple soundbite can polarize, drive apart, but it also affects our reasoning and our service to people in need. As a person of faith, and I'll take the risk of speaking faith language in here, when you look at what Jesus did, Jesus always went towards where there was trouble, where there was hurt, where there was pain, and showed care and mercy and forgiveness. And I think that if we had more of a compassionate stance, we would be more worried about service to low-income women. Now, I oppose abortion myself, but I'm not for outlawing it, and I'll tell you why. When I was practicing law, I practiced law for 18 years in Oakland, California, when I was when I was a member of my community, and I would often get court appointed to represent either difficult clients, that was often it, or kids in difficult cases. And this one time I was appointed to represent Jamie, a 13-year-old, who'd been raped by her uncle. She was pregnant at 13. I have to say that for Jamie's sake, I had to seriously consider what was my adamant stance on abortion. She broke my heart. She broke my heart because this little kid, so hungry for love, kept trying to define what her uncle had done to her as love. But was so terrified about what would happen if she were really pregnant. She was pregnant. What would happen to her as pregnant? Her body couldn't have sustained a pregnancy. And so I had to talk to her about her choices. Talking to her about her choices, I realized I could not be the sanctimonious judge that said, this is it, this is your only choice. I had to face the reality that maybe in this instance, abortion was a choice Jamie had to look at and possibly make, and that I would walk with her through whatever choice she made. That changed my heart on this, because I knew that if there was not a legal option, she in her desperation, or her family's desperation, would take her to a back alley. And I'm old enough to remember the back alleys and having heard stories of other women's suffering and death. And so I could no longer be so sanctimonious. Jamie changed my life, this 13-year-old. But it's something we don't talk about too often within my tradition. We don't talk about the anguish. And I think it's because mercy is much harder for us than being certain or right or polarized. And if we're looking at politics, we're going to have this rigid points of view and feel very secure. But reality is so much more complex than that. A few weeks after Jamie and I had our first conversation, we were trying to walk towards this story of what was going to be her choice in this situation. Thank heaven she had a spontaneous miscarriage, and she never had to make that final choice. But what it was for me was having to face that choice for myself, that I could no longer be the same when it came to my certitude about abortion for everyone. So I say, personally, I oppose abortion. But I think it needs to be available to a woman who's desperate enough to make a choice. Here's another data piece on this one, is that in France has a much more permissive abortion policies than in the U.S. But do you know, they have a lower abortion rate. And all the studies indicate the main reason is women have supportive services. Everyone gets health care. There's prenatal care. Not only that, a woman who's had a baby in France gets a year's paid leave to be with her child. Dads also get some paid paternity leave, but I'm not as up on how long that is. There's in-home support for when a new mom brings home the baby from the hospital. There's low-cost child care so that a mom can return to work. And because of those economic supports, fewer women feel the desperate need to have abortion, even though their laws are more permissive than our own. This is where I think mercy needs to break open the heart of our politics. Mercy needs to break open the heart of our politics so that we no longer argue in this polarized fashion, unencumbered by much data, and totally unaware of the needs of women. Rather, where I think Mercy calls us to is that if we're serious about life, then what we have to do is nourish women, support them in their pregnancies, provide economic options and alternatives, and let's make a real difference so that women don't make this choice. That's mercy, because that is compassion and kindly forbearance when it's so much easier to be sanctimonious and right. I, as a Catholic sister, I don't get married, I don't have kids, so my arguing about being anti-abortion doesn't touch my life, but it touches so many other lives. So I believe mercy requires us to move toward this center that is way more complex, much less satisfying, but way more needed by our people, especially women in this time. Pullman, you're all here in this town, are in the midst of a crisis over this where you could get polarized. Maybe you could provide some leadership in calling us to mercy, to a more careful examination of what do women need and how do we meet their needs. That's what I call you to. The second issue I'd like to raise up is Kim Davis. You heard about Kim Davis. She is the clerk of a county in Kentucky who refused to sign marriage certificates so that same-sex couples could get married. And she got held in contempt of court. And she was in jail over the weekend, and it was big on one side and it was big on the other. Pope Francis is in town. He's all about compassion. He's all about changing these buzzwords. Oh, I should tell you about one. It goes back to the last piece, but it was really cool. First, Pope Francis is talking to Congress about economic justice, and the Democrats who, I was sitting facing the Pope, so the Democrats were off to my left, as you would imagine, the Republicans on my right. And the Pope Francis says something about economic reform and injustice, and the Dems jump up and applaud, and the Republicans got up slowly and applauded. I think they must have made an agreement. They would all get up together. They were trying not to make this thing partisan. But then finally, Pope Francis speaks about the dignity of all life. And the Republicans jump up and applaud and cheer and hoot. And the Democrats got up slowly and applauded. And then Pope Francis says, and that's why during my papacy I have made it my goal for the global abolition of the death penalty. And you could just hear the Republicans on that side going, that wasn't what they were thinking when they heard about the dignity of all life. These were code words. Pope Francis also turned code words on their head. So he was supposed to come out against gay marriage, right? We all heard about that. He was supposed to be really tough on it. That's what all the people on the right were saying. Well, if you look at what he said, he only spoke about the sanctity of the family, about how the family is so important, and to consider the most vulnerable, consider the young in families, and that what we needed to do was to care for all families without talking about the parents. Now, this to me is a leadership into mercy, because Pope Francis walked a very fine line of trying to get to the heart of what's needed in our society, avoiding the polarizing sound bites. I know I can be polarizing sometimes. I really think I'm right. I'm sure you probably have that same thought, if they'd only do it my way, right? Well, the fact is, we've got to find a way to come together. So Kim Davis, let's look at what happened with Kim Davis. Kim Davis served a weekend in jail because she was in contempt of court for refusing to sign. The judge let her out because the judge said, "Oh my God, she's not going to change her mind." And you can be in jail for contempt until you change your mind. I mean, that's the idea. So then what happened was the Pope comes, Pope leaves. Pope has not triggered any of the culture wars. Has talked to us about who we're called to be in our country, our vision of the American dream, our vision of welcoming the immigrant, our vision of being our better selves, is caring for our families, of ending this economic, ridiculous thing where work doesn't pay and our people are having to be in safety net programs while they're working full time in order to care for their families. And he's really challenging us to be our best selves. And some on the right feel like they're losing control, they're losing their power. So they leaked that the Pope met with Kim Davis. And they tried to say that the Pope endorsed Kim Davis's position. And they tried to say, therefore, the Pope really spoke out against gay marriage, and therefore, the Catholic Church hasn't changed its position, and therefore, we're right and you're wrong. The polarization, not mercy. Oh, and then my friends on the left. Sometimes, some of my political friends are not very strategic. I mean, it seems very clear to me that it was folks on the extreme right trying to stir up trouble because they felt like they were losing control. And some of my friends, they just have to react. We can't let that go unchallenged. And so they were all going to get out there and say, that's wrong, 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 wrong. And I finally just said, I did his email. You know those listservs, email listservs, you're on a bunch of them. Oh, they drive me nuts. Anyway, nanner. Finally I just emailed and said, stop it! The more you draw attention to it, the more fuel to the fire you give for it. The more polarization, the more you pull back on the other side, the more you reinforce what you're fighting against. Anyway, the Vatican finally issued a statement that, yes, the Pope met with Kim Davis in a group of about 20, didn't speak to her specifically, and it was no endorsement for her position. But the right continues to nanner, and some of my nutty friends on the far left continue to nanner, because we don't know how to deal beyond the culture wars. So here's the deal. I believe we are called, and you young folks have more opportunity to practice this because we desperately need your help. We're called to practice what I call radical acceptance. Mercy is all about a radical acceptance where I radically accept into my care and concern not just Jamie, the 13-year-old who had to consider whether or not she had an abortion after being raped, but all the women who face that question. Do I radically accept and hold in my concern the men involved in those women's lives? Do I radically care about Jamie's uncle who raped her? It'd be easy to vote him off the island. It's very tempting. But if we're going to exercise mercy, we have got to find a kind of forbearance that includes our concern for even the rapist. We've got to find a way to radically accept in some sort of caring love the people we disagree with politically. We've got to find a way to say, in the vision and goal of our nation, we're better than that, than the polarization. We can make a difference. So radical acceptance is caring in love for the dignity of all. And then, when you get to that holy place of radically accepting and caring for all of those, even those that drive me nuts, and I probably should confess, it's good for sisters to confess their sins, right? So my sin is it's really hard for me to accept Mitch McConnell.
There's no sin there, sister.
Oh, no. Blessings on you, brother. But there is, because if I can't accept Mitch McConnell, then I cannot show care and mercy to him too. And the important piece of being able to say, I care as much about him as I do about Jamie, is what we're called to as a nation, either in faith or in politics. So we're called to this radical acceptance. And then after we get to that holy place, then we're called to fighting. Fighting, not against. Too often we fight against. Like, I'd love to fight. I enjoy fighting against. Okay, I enjoy fighting against Congressman Paul Ryan. You know Paul Ryan? I have a wonderful relationship with him where we spar and we go back and forth. And I told some of you this before, but a friend of mine was standing next to him a couple months ago in the O'Hare Airport to get on an airplane to come to D.C., and she introduces herself as a friend to Sister Simone Campbell. And he said, oh, I always enjoy talking with Sister Simone. It's always interesting. And Sally goes on to say, chat about projects and policy. And then finally Sally said things I care about, income and wealth disparity, tax policy. And then Sally says to him, well, she hasn't given up on you yet. And Paul Ryan says back to her, well, I haven't given up on her either. So, we will continue. But rather than fighting against, I really believe, because we push back, we talk about pushing back against, what we're called to do is to rather fight for a shared vision. So my new strategy with Paul Ryan is trying to articulate this shared vision of what we're working towards. And if we articulate a shared vision, then we have a chance of trying to find policies that can move us forward. So for instance, with Planned Parenthood, what's our vision for women, pregnant women at this point? What's our vision for healthcare services for women? What's our vision to make a difference? Or with our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, what's our vision for family for them? How can we move forward together in a way that respects family for everyone? That's the challenge that we're facing. And I do this work because of faith. And for me, I as you can tell, I goof off around it about everything. But I say that Jesus and justice both begin with J, so obviously they're connected. So the important piece is that we've got to find ways forward. If we put radical acceptance and fighting for a vision together, then I believe that in faith is like being called to be the burning bush. That it's that moment of spiritual holiness where God can flame up in our lives and we can be our better selves together. But all of us don't share that faith. Have you noticed that? We're all different. We all have different perspectives. And one of the joys of our nation is that we are so pluralistic. So what do we share? Some people want us to think we don't share anything. But what we do share is the Constitution. And that's why a center like this is so important. So that we value the Constitution, so that where we do come together, regardless of faith, regardless of perspective, regardless of polarization, is in the preamble to the Constitution. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do hereby ordain and establish this nation. That's where we meet. And we need everybody at the table to make that happen. So, mercy is about making room for everybody. There's room in my care, in my heart, for everyone. But we have to fight for that common vision so that we, the people, can be the best of ourselves. So to close this, let's close it there, and then I'll finish with the thing. So I just want to encourage you all, especially the younger folks, hold that vision strong. Be committed to the communal reality that we're in it together. And really reject the unpatriotic lie that we're based in individualism. We need you. Our communities need you. Our nation needs you. because it's we the people, all of us together. We care about your future. Hopefully you care about ours. And together we can build the bridges that we're called to build. We can make the difference. As long as we hold in our hearts those we'd rather make enemies, and if we fight for the vision that we care about. Thank you very much. Okay, let's open this up for conversation. I'm really dying to know what you think. This is the first time I've talked that much about Planned Parenthood and abortion, so I don't know. What do you think? Shot with a firing squad in a very compassionate, merciful way.
Have you talked to the Pope about your ideas?
Have I talked to the Pope about my ideas? No. He's way above me. But what I can tell you is that we just did this bus trip, and on the bus we got little video, short videos of people all along our bus trip talking about their worries, the challenges that divide their community, and then how they see the way forward. And we have these little video clips. We have 40 of them on a tablet that we got that had the bus on the front cover of it, and we got it to the Pope through a highly placed government official. It was really, they'd have to kill me if I tell you who, but it was.
Was he riding along on the bus?
Pardon?
Was he riding along on the bus?
He did. He has at a time ridden on the bus, but the thing was that was as close as I got. I have to say Pope Francis is like the articulation of what my life has been about. So his speech to Congress, next to the last paragraph, is like the articulation of my life. Working for unity and freedom of Abraham Lincoln, working for social justice and voting rights of Dr. King, working in service to the poor, and responding to need of Dorothy Day, and acting for dialogue from a contemplative stance, Thomas Merton. I mean, that's like the articulation of my life. It was like, can't tell you. Get tears in my eyes just thinking about it. But no, he hasn't talked to me. I haven't talked to him. I'm just a puppy. Yeah.
Sister, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
You're a hero of mine, and it's a thrill to be in the same room with you today. And I happen to agree with Chris Matthews when he says that it's women who do the real important work of the American Roman Catholic Church. They're not ordained yet, but they're out in the trenches doing the really important stuff. And I completely agree with him on that point. My question for you, though, is about a different level of politics, or a different type of politics.
Right.
And that's Vatican politics. I was shocked but not surprised when Pope Benedict came down on the American Sisters for being too radical.
Promoting radical feminist themes. Why would he ever say something like that?
I was outraged but not surprised. But I was very surprised when Pope Francis, and I'm old enough to remember Pope John the 23rd, and I see him and Pope Francis a lot. I was surprised how long it took Pope Francis to take the boot off the neck of the American Sisters. Why did it take a year of his papacy before he removed that?
Why did it take a year? He was busy. I mean, quite frankly, the challenge. Pope Francis got elected because Pope Benedict had made a mess of administration and organization of the rest of the church, and he had an extremely full plate. And it's not clear that Pope Francis even really knew what was going on with the American church, and so it took him a while to figure it out, what was happening. I mean, he had to work through many layers. But here's the deal. The irony, the utter irony of this thing is that our little organization, Network, got named in the censure from the Vatican as being a bad influence on Catholic sisters. We had 9 full-time staff at that moment. And our 9 full-time staff made the Vatican nervous? I mean, really? I mean, that gave us, it was really like pretty odd. But because we got named, we could be public. I could be public in the media. But our sisters, who had to negotiate with Rome, couldn't be in the media. So my question, but you have to know, 4 days before the censure came out, we had our 40th anniversary party for our organization Network. And the big question was, how do we let people know? We've been lobbying on Capitol Hill for 40 years. what do you do? Do you get it? Have a little Google ad, or tweet it out, or I don't know. What do we do? And really, 4 days later, the Vatican answered our prayer. We would have never had Nuns on the Bus. We would have never had any of this opportunity to be in the media in this way, but for the Vatican. So we say, well, should we send them a thank you note? But all things do work to the good. That is one of the key things about the spiritual life. You all, in your journeys, you can be in really tough spots and you think this is the worst thing ever. But if you journey through, it ends up being one of the bigger gifts. It was horribly painful. It was shocking. It was terrible. I would never want to go through it again, but it gave us an amazing opportunity. 9/10 of the reason I'm here is because of the Vatican censure, because we got known. And so the Spirit, from my perspective as a person of faith, that the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, to whom my community is dedicated, used that moment to lift up our mission in a unique way. So it was painful. I don't want to volunteer for it again. And Pope Francis did take a year, but he was busy. There are a lot of stuff going on. And that, really, American sisters, 60,000 of us in the 1.2 billion universal church, we're kind of small potatoes. And finally, he just said, I'm going to the U.S. Stop it. End it. So everybody made nice. Oh, we learned so much. It's really nice. But I'll tell you, there's still problems with what I call middle management within the church. Our local bishops sometimes. Not everybody got the message. On this most recent bus trip, Bishop Taylor from Archbishop Taylor, I think he's Archbishop, from the Bishop of Arkansas, came to one of our sessions, our town halls, which was wonderful. Stayed, he did the whole town hall, he just participated. And in Columbus, we don't know if it was the bishop or some of his underlings, said we couldn't meet on church property. So middle management still isn't quite sure about us. And the whole reason everybody's mad at us, not everybody, they're mad at us, is because we won on health care. I wrote the Nuns letter, healthcare passed because of us. The bishops had taken a position opposing it. I read the bill. I know there was no federal funding of abortion in the bill. The bishop's staff told them that there was, so they opposed the bill. We were in support of it. We won. And as one of the signers of the letter I wrote said, oh, Simone, it's just that the girls played the boys. And for once, the girls won.
Chris Matthews also says that bishops are Republicans and nuns are Democrats.
Which apparently John Kennedy said. Anyway, other comments, yeah.
I too adore you, and the only person in the whole world that would thrill me more meeting would be the Pope than meeting you. So I do.
Sweet. Thank you.
I do adore what you do, and you're really. But since your group has supported Obamacare, and there is another part of the nuns who are saying, wait a minute, how is Network working with the Catholic hospitals and Catholic facilities, medical facilities that deny rights, that will fire gay and lesbian people, and
okay. Our mission is to work on federal policy on Capitol Hill. I work someplace where I have more of a hope of more rapid change than the beloved Catholic Church. Our beloved Catholic Church took 350 years to figure out Galileo might be right. They're not exactly noted for rapid change. So, the Catholic Health Association was also in favor of the Affordable Care Act, and actually our letter was merely supporting CHA. They're working very hard with various healthcare facilities to improve their policies. There is this challenge, though, is that far-right political forces have convinced a few, like the Little Sisters of the Poor, that Catholic Health Association is wrong. And they have given them a large quantity of money in order to fund these lawsuits. And so there is, and the Little Sisters of the Poor do this fabulous ministry. This was another right-wing thing that people were trying to make some hay out of, because Pope Francis went to visit the Little Sisters of the Poor facility in Washington, D.C. Network went to the Little Sisters of the Poor facility to do our political ministry day, to be in service and visit with the elderly there. They do a fabulous work. But some administrator men, pardon me guys, men have convinced the sisters that they're better politically aligned with the far right and gave them all this money in order to do these lawsuits. So it's manipulation, but what we have to have is a heart of mercy so that nobody gets left out of our care, even them. Even these people that I'd like to vote off the island. I can't vote off the island. We've got to find a way for all of us to move forward. And if we have a vision, not about the fight over the regulations in Obamacare, but rather the fight for our people to get health care so that everyone can have access to health care. In the richest nation on earth, we can't do what most developed nations have been able to do. Get our people health care? Hello? It's not rocket science. I mean, the Affordable Care Act has problems. It was never intended to be the final law. So it's got problems built into it. But it's better than what we had. But if we fight for a vision, then we can get around it. But the problem is, for political reasons, people don't want to fight for a vision. They want to fight for opposition. Therein lies the problem. Anyway, so I don't do that part. I got enough trouble. I lobby on the Hill. Young people comments. The old people have been commenting. What do you think? Am I nuts? Yeah.
I'm curious, from your experience as a political insider, as a lobbyist professionally, how do we get attention of our representatives? What are the effective ways for us to voice our opinion on issues to our representatives and actually have some effect? I feel like all these online petitions go into a black hole.
You're right. Most of them. Okay, these online petitions, horrifying things, sign this petition immediately. Read the fine print. Read if they're going to deliver them. Often what happens is people use horrifying stuff in D.C. they called it building a list. They want to build lists. They don't really care about delivering these petitions. They want to build the list. Now, if our organization, Network, ever does a petition, I have insisted we don't do list building petitions. We do actual petitions that get delivered to someone, hand delivered. Okay, so you got to read the fine print. Are they going to deliver it, or is it just a list building? If you want to be on the list, that's fine. That's cool, but it's not. This is going to get you pooled in with other outraged people, and not really affect something. The young people have probably one of the easiest accesses ever because legislators love young people. They know you are their future. And so you can do things like a phone call. I'm a student at WSU here in Foley. Your senators, your federal senators from Washington State are very responsive. They're good people. It would be good to invite them to come. I don't know. I have Patty Murray or Maria Cantwell.
We invite them regularly.
Good. We'll get a little campaign going. Tweet at them. Their people are on Twitter. I don't think either one of them does their own Twitter, but tweet at them. Say, come to WSU. Have a little campaign. Get them here. Build relationships. I will say that the representative from this area is a little tougher right now to develop a relationship with, because she's climbing in the Republican Party in the power structure, and she's trying to look more conservative than the conservatives. So right now she's more worried. Her audience isn't her constituents, it's the other Republicans in Congress. So, I mean, you could try there. I don't know the lay of the land on the state level so much, but I will tell you, because anyone who's a student has more clout than most, because they see you as the future. And if they can get you under their wing, then they have a long-term, you have a long-term commitment and things they care about. If you do emails to Congress, those are great, those are fine. If you do a form email, be sure to change the form email just a little bit, because they've got a program that compares one email with another, and if they're exactly the same, it goes into a file that we call AstroTurf, not grassroots, because they can say that it's not real grassroots, it's, it's just a form letter. So always change it. Just all you have to do is just change a sentence. Or, I care about this because, or I'm a student at WSU and I've cared about this forever, or, whatever. But that'll get you into the to be read pile as opposed to the AstroTurf file. What else can you do? In order, a email is good, a phone call is better, and a visit is best. Those are the ascending things. In terms of how much time it takes, an email is the easiest, a phone call is second, and a visit's tough. But it's important. So if you come to DC or visit the local office, those kinds of things are fabulous. Oh, and I should say, for the young folks here, Network, our organization, has an 11-month post-BA program for people interested in politics. If you have an interest in it, you come, it's paid, not a lot, but it's paid. We help you find low-cost housing. And for 11 months, we push you into the deep end of politics in DC. And we do education, organizing, and lobbying. So you get to participate with us. And everybody becomes a key member of the team. It's not like one of those things where you just make copy. No. We all believe everybody brings something to the table. We want to hear what we got. So those are some of the ways. Cool. Other comments? Yeah.
In your opposition to abortion, then, are you automatically kind of having to oppose stem cell research, or
I think those are much more nuanced also. I mean, the irony of stem cell research, it's not what the political reality was in the Bush administration, when we didn't know everybody carried around stem cells. Now, knowing that everybody, regardless of your age, we still got stem cells hanging around. So research is a lot easier on stem cells. It doesn't just rely on embryos. And so that issue has diminished a lot, though people unencumbered by data still want to stir it up as being a big hot issue. That's more about the war, the culture of war. Now there is a book called, Chris Hedges wrote it. He's really, really angry right now. I heard him talk not too long ago. It's hard to listen to because he's really angry. But his book in 2002, War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning, says that, he says, he's a war correspondent, and when leaders don't know where they're going or don't have a vision, they'll come to see themselves as attacked, and then they've got a right of self-defense. And then anything goes. So I have a hunch that some of the culture wars are because people don't have a vision of where we're going. And if you don't have a vision where we're going, then we'll go to war with each other. And so that this whole idea about articulating a vision is really necessary to end it. So that we have a plan of something bigger outside ourselves. Does that make some sense? That was like a whole separate lecture, but it just didn't.
Time for one more question.
One more question? Somebody brave? A girl? What do you think? Young women of the world? Yes.
So, in young people like us, what are you seeing as a common trend on the Planned Parenthood debate?
On the what? Planned Parenthood?
debate?
On the bus trip, we met in several universities, and what I saw were especially women much less willing to be doctrinaire or polarized about this issue, and have friends or know people who, or they themselves, have used Planned Parenthood services. And so I have a real different feeling about it. It seems to be an older person's battle, war, and of what I've seen, and I don't have a broad sample. And maybe the bus got welcomed in places where people were more understanding than less, so that I could have a skewed view. But I really do think that if we care about women and women's health, we have to be real about the need for service. And Planned Parenthood has done a good job serving women. And defunding them is not even a fruitcake because it's about insurance reimbursement. It's not about direct money to Planned Parenthood. But the politicians use it to make hay. So let's use mercy and create, we the people that say, care for women, be responsible. In the richest nation on earth, we can make a difference. So, it saddens me what's going on. But we can stand up and say, women should be careful. Let's make sure our women, let's make sure we are cared for. So I'll stand with you. I'm sure there's other folks here in the room that will. Thank you so much.
That's probably more famous than we've had in the song.